If families do not have access to tech, games, like resources, then they cannot do STEM. All right, tell me why.
A big part of sort of moving or thinking about how you can support STEM-focused education, science, technology, engineering, and math is really being able to support your child when they ask questions and helping them to follow along with that. There are lots of things in the house, if you will, that you can think about. You can go outside and look at nature and be able to start and dig into science, if you will, right in that space.
My conversation with Rukiya Curvey Johnson was so phenomenal, we had to split it in two. Let's jump back in. And here today we have Rukiya Curvey Johnson, who's going to talk to us about all the great work that's happening at Rush University. Welcome, Rukiya.
Thank you.
Back in 2017, 2016, you led the district's pre-K through 12th grade STEM strategy. And then guess what happened? We went into a nationwide pandemic. So talk a little bit about how COVID shifted some of what your initial thinkings were around how we educate children around STEM.
Well, actually, if anything, COVID just underscored and reinforced and confirmed the need to integrate STEM-focused instructional practices throughout our educational system. COVID was a time where obviously we saw children shift to learning at home. And so that need to think about how do we educate and engage children in that home space obviously became doubly important. The technology and integration became even more important. And so understanding and thinking about the concepts around how children learn, the best modes and methods of learning. I think we got some ideas about that during that COVID time. I think seeing the actual health impacts, right? Understanding the disease. We didn't know about sort of the after effect of the disease when it happened. No one really knew. There wasn't a vaccine at the time. If anything, it actually crystallized the need for people to understand more about a STEM approach. The one thing about science that people really get wrong is that science actually is about finding out things. It's exploring. If you ask a scientist, they will never say that certain things they know as absolute truth because they know that there's always more to learn. And you're testing hypotheses, you're testing ideas, and you seeing what may work here, may not work in this condition, may work in another condition. And so this understanding about the nature of how science works, understanding how vaccines actually work, again, underscored the importance. It also lifted up another area that was really concrete in terms of kind of raising visibility, was understanding how different research and medical equipment may function differently in terms of having racial bias built in. There's something called an oxygen, a pulsometer that will measure the oxygen in your blood. And part of how it does that is scanning your skin. Well, initially, these pulsometers did not actually work on dark skin. And so, again, that underscores the need to think about who's doing research, who's actually designing some of this equipment, and then how do we make sure that we're developing young people to go into these careers where they may get a chance to be in a space where they can help to bring that question like, does this actually work for all people or just some people? So, again, just to kind of circle back, I don't really think anything sort of changed in terms of thinking about the approach to be comprehensive, to think about problem-based learning and sort of bringing real world challenges into the classroom. Also being inquiry based, thinking about how do you actually apply science and math and engineering in these different spaces to solve challenges. That has not changed. And that was basically the core and root of the approach that we took when we thought about the district STEM strategy.
Yeah, and just hearing you talk, I just think it underscores more the need to educate families at earlier in their child's educational journey than it does to wait. And I also hear the importance of providing opportunities for children to be curious. I also hear the need to ensure that teachers are equipped to ask those open-ended questions that allow children to explore and to investigate. And I think I also hear we need to change our mindset around what it is that we can do in regards to math and science. So I just have to say, with all that, this has been so eye-opening to me. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I don't know where to go from here other than to really encourage families to seek out opportunities to make their children aware of what's all available through the different sciences, right? So going to the different museums, finding partnerships like yours, and just, that children's museum when they're, 2, 3 is just that whole building is a curiosity classroom, right? And so where they can explore and ask questions and figure out. And so that way, when we come to school, we're building on some of that inquiry. So I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So this is my favorite part of the podcast, where we play one of my favorite childhood games, Red Light, Green Light. Did you play that?
I did.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to play Red Light, Green Light. And this is an opportunity to demystify false information out there that families might be aware of. And so I'm going to ask you some questions. And if the question is correct, you want to hold up your green paddle and share a little bit about why. If could be, maybe, you want to hold up your yellow. If it's absolutely false, you want to hold up your red, and then really give us an explanation as to why it is so. So let me think. So my first question is parent involvement doesn't actually help STEM learning. Tell me why.
So parents' engagement and involvement is so important for STEM learning. Through the Rush Education and Career Hub, we actually offer workshops for some of our parents and other caring, connected caregivers for them to be able to learn alongside their child. They are often their children's first teacher, and they are often very influential, of course, about what careers their child might be interested in, and they have to be supportive. So who's taking that child to the library, to the museum, who is maybe gathering some of the resources that they might need to do their experiments or such. So parent and family engagement is so, so important.
So here's a hard one. STEM education matters most only in high school. I think we know why that's true, but I want to hear what you have to say.
STEM education really has to begin early. In high school, you're really thinking about how do you cultivate and bring students along. But in order to have something to cultivate, you had to have planted the seeds early. And so that STEM education has to happen, or should happen, as early as possible. When you actually look at STEM professionals, most of them have decided on a career and really gotten engaged by middle school. And so that means an early start.
That's so true, because in the district, we like to say that post-secondary pathway starts in pre-K. And it even starts beyond that when you think about all the learning that takes place when they're at home with their families. And that's why that family engagement piece that we spoke about earlier is so important. Here's one I hear a lot. So I'm curious to get your answer on this. Talking about germs, bodies, growth is kind of taboo for kids.
I'm actually say.
I'm going to say this one. Okay.
I say that because in some households and some spaces, there are some parents and families who are really open and they take that curious approach. And in others, it may be taboo. And some parents may feel hesitant to answer any questions that their child might have about their body and such. But what we do know is that it is an opportunity for a STEM talk. It is an opportunity to think about the science behind what is happening. And it's an opportunity, hopefully, in the school setting. And I know that's actually one of the modules that we will do in schools is to think about human anatomy. You usually get that later on in high school, but there isn't really any reason why you can't start in earlier grades to learn about body systems and how things work. And it does demystify it a bit and take some of the fear, if you will, out of it by sort of bringing it around the science and it's biology. It's what happened. And also when you can compare it to other animals. We're mammals. There are other animals that are mammals.
Yes.
And you can make those easier connections, if you will, to help young people or help children see like, oh, this is what this means. This is actually, I'll give an example, like breastfeeding.
Yes.
Humans aren't the only ones that breastfeed. And if they can see that in other animals, then one, you're introducing them to them. You take some of the stigma away and you can also help to possibly foster a foundation where a young girl might feel comfortable later on breastfeeding. So,
yeah, I say no because I agree. With my daughter, I started using real words with her about her body very early on. And it was so funny because she used to walk around saying, I have a vagina. And there, and people used to be so like, they're like, what? Shh, like don't. But, I wanted her to know the proper, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I wanted her to know the proper body parts, right? And so she has always been one that has been very vocal, but always, talk like she was talking to adults because she was raised around myself, my friends who were all older. So we always spoke to her with not a lot of baby talk. And so she got the real deal. But it was so funny how she felt so free saying it, but other people were kind of like, oh, wait, don't say that, So I think as I think about it, it is uncomfortable for families. But I think, like you said, we can make references to where there is some level of comfortability with children because they are going to get to that space where they talk about their body parts. But I think if we can start with this and treat it as big vocabulary, right? It may be helpful. All right. So last question. If families do not have access to tech, games, like resources, then they cannot do STEM. All right, tell me why.
A big part of sort of moving or thinking about how you can support STEM-focused education, science, technology, engineering, and math is really being able to support your child when they ask questions and helping them to follow along with that. There are lots of things in the house, if you will, that you can think about. You can go outside and look at nature and be able to start and dig into science, if you will, right in that space. And again, we talked earlier about cooking, nutrition, food. Where does it come from? There are just a number of things. Clothes. What are the clothes made of? There are so many things that you can do just from being inside the house, being able to ask questions, accessing the library. The libraries are wonderful spaces that you can go to and check out books for free. And actually, you can get museum passes from the library. And some of them have maker spaces in there. So even if you don't have that at home, if you will, there are resources across the city that you might be able to access. But the most important thing is being able to nurture and support your child's curiosity as a way to support their STEM-focused learning.
I agree. And I think we said it earlier, STEM is all around us. It's in the kitchen when we're cooking. It's outside when we're like walking through the grass. It's, in all of our, incredible museums across the city, which you referenced. And I think, if we do nothing today, it's really to arm families to know that, one, you don't have to buy anything to foster a love of STEM, right? And you don't have to know it all, right? You can just ask questions. And the easiest way to start with something that's your child is interested in, and that could be cooking breakfast. You could start there, right? So you don't need a lot. You just need what's already in your house and in your vicinity. So I think I've jumped the gun a little bit just on what I just said, because I gave some really good tips. And I usually, being an educator, always give homework. So I think, what I said was a good way for families to introduce, if they haven't already, their little ones to STEM and to begin thinking about it in the home. So I do want to pass it over to you to provide, one action item or something that you want families to remember based off of this conversation we had today.
So I think you said it already and I've said it, but if families can take one thing from our conversation today, I think it is important to ask questions with your child and let them ask questions about the world around them and see if you can just sort of follow along their line of curiosity so that it is nurtured. Don't shut them down. Sometimes if you don't know, just say, let's figure this out together. And that's just a good first step.
I agree. Thank you again for being here.
All right. Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed our discussion.
Me too.